Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. This is Justin. In this video, we're gonna be talking about authenticity. So I feel like the best way that we can understand what it is, why it matters, why we're authentic or why we're not, what to do about it, is to just start with a definition. I feel like authenticity seems like such a kind of confusing concept. We all know that we should be ourselves or just let our real selves out or just let our light shine or however you wanna say. But then we don't, and it just quickly becomes very confusing and we give each other advice, right? Like, okay, well, you should just be yourself. And we know that, but for some reason that's very, very difficult. And so what I've tried to do here is put this into a system where we can understand it and then really make the choice that needs to be made, which is, are we going to be authentic or not? So let's get into it. So this is my definition of authenticity, which is X equals X. Pretty simple, right? So if we were to fill these in with numbers, let's say we put 1 equals 2, that wouldn't be an authentic 1, right? This isn't what it equals it. But if 1 equals 1, if the color blue equals blue, it would be the real thing. It would be authentic. So for now, let's assume X equals X, where X equals us, that we are in complete connection on the same wavelength or same frequency as ourselves, whatever that real self is. So we're gonna start here. But then the question quickly becomes, okay, well, if that's so simple, why aren't we doing it? What else is going on here that is preventing us from being authentic, which most of us know is a good thing, right? That most of us believe is a good thing. So this is what's going on. So let's let X1 equal our true self and X2 equal whatever self that we're being right now. So we've got X1, this is the frequency that it's on. So whatever life would look like if we were 100% ourselves, that's right here. And then here, we have whatever life looks like for us right now. So to start breaking this down and to start knowing what we should do with all of this, we need to start defining the variables more. So the first question we need to ask ourselves is, what is X1? X1 equals what? What is it that we're trying to get to? So I find that the best way to kind of figure out who it is that we really are is to over and over, maybe on a daily or at least a weekly basis, to ask ourselves, what would my life look like if I was not afraid of anything and it was impossible to fail? You knew it was gonna be okay. Nobody could make fun of you. You weren't gonna make fun of yourself because you just knew that it would be all right. So how would you be speaking? How would you be walking or talking or dressing or acting or portraying yourself? What type of career would you have? What type of romantic life would you have, or family life or friendship life, or that thing that you love to do, whether it's knitting or soccer or dance or rock climbing? What would your life look like? How would you be feeling? So when we ask ourselves these questions of what would my life look like if it was perfect and it was impossible to fail, if you could not fail, and then we start answering quickly, whether by writing on paper or out loud, we start to get these glimpses of who we really are, what we would really do, how we would really act if we were not afraid of anything. Not what somebody else said, not what we said, no failure was possible. It's just how we would exist, what our existence would look like. And so I really feel that getting to X1, this truest version of who we are, is actually very difficult. I feel it's just difficult in the same way that getting a perfect body or becoming an amazing piano player or becoming an amazing scientist, it takes a lot of work and a lot of dedication, a lot of awareness. I think a lot of people just say, oh, well, I don't know who I am and I don't know why. And they look at someone else and they think that that person knows and they don't know and they're not sure why that is. But at least I can tell you that in my experience, not that I perfectly know who I am, but I put a lot of work into it. I ask myself these questions all the time. What would life look like if it was perfect? How would my life be different if it was impossible for me to fail, if I wasn't afraid of anything? And it would look different. I will admit on camera, it will look different. I'm trying my best, it will look different. So the more we ask ourselves this, it's almost like doing your exercises, where you get a clearer and clearer concept of, okay, if I didn't edit myself in any way, if I could just be completely myself, that's what this wavelength or this frequency or this way of existing or living would look like. And every single one of us is different, which is what makes it so amazing. But the first step is to define X1, because if we don't know what authentically ourselves is, which is what X1 is representing here, then we can't be it, right? It's impossible. If I said, hey, let's go to that restaurant, and I drive and you drive and we get there, and then we call each other and we're upset that neither of us got where we thought we were gonna go, but we have to define where we're going. We have to define what is the real us. And this sounds kind of corny or cliche or positive thinking or however you wanna say, but if we don't know who we really are, that becomes a pretty big problem, because it means we really can't live the life that we wanna live. I mean, it would be impossible. So the second thing we have to do, which is a little bit easier, but also a little bit painful, is we have to define X2. X2 in this picture is what we're living now. Who are we living like now? What is the frequency or wavelength that we're existing on? How are we being in all of our fullness? What are we thinking, speaking, acting, feeling? What type of a life are we living? And we want to try to be as honest with ourselves as possible, because the next thing we have to figure out is closing this gap. So here is the difference between who we would be if we were completely ourselves and who we are right now. And remember, if we didn't have this X1 and X2, if we just had X equals X, it's we equal ourselves. We're in complete rapport. So guys, authenticity, it's a lot like being in rapport with yourself, because if you have who you're made to be, who you're born to be, and you have who you're really being, and you put them together, there's this flow, there's this connection, there's this confidence. And that, in my opinion, is authenticity. X equals X. It's being your full self, being completely on that wavelength with who you really are. So now that we know these two things, we basically have to make a choice, right? It's, do we stay here or do we go here? And I think a lot of us, we know that this is better and that we should, but for some reason we stay here. So why is that? So I think the biggest reason why that is because we're scared, right? You're like, hey, Justin, what if I know who I want to be, but I'm scared? Right here, right? So when we're scared, what we're really saying is we're scared to make this jump from where we are now to our real self, because if we jump, we might fall. And then we have to face the fact that maybe we weren't as good at these things that are important to us as we thought we were. And if something's not important, it's not that big a deal, right? You fail at it and kind of is what it is. But let's say you love to play soccer and you put yourself out there and you did terribly, and you just decide, man, that made me feel so bad about myself. Like maybe I can't go for it anymore, because then you have to face the fact that you're not who you thought you were. And so I think that most of us are so afraid of making that jump that we stay here, right? So if we stay here, we don't have to face that fear of failure. But I think that in human behavior, it's so strange, I don't know why it is, but we have certain gaps or blind spots, almost like in a car, where you look back and there's just a certain part that you don't see. And I think that that's true for us too. I think there's certain parts that we don't see. So we do see a certain safeness here. We see a safeness to not going for it. And I think that that's why we stay, right? We stay because it's safer here than here. But I think what we don't understand is that there's also a very, very expensive price that we pay to stay here. Now, a lot could be said about professional life, business life, personal life, relationships with others. I mean, if you're not in rapport with yourself, if you're not in confidence with yourself, it's gonna affect your sales, it's gonna affect your business, it's gonna affect leadership, it's gonna affect intimate relationships, it's gonna affect friendships, family relationships. I mean, the more out of rapport we are with ourselves, meaning we're struggling internally between who we really want to be and really who we're being over here, and they're just missing each other, everything's going to get affected negatively, which is terrible. And we could probably put very large dollar amounts and intimacy amounts on all of these things that are devastating. But really, in this video, and we're going to wrap it up soon, but I just want to show really the devastation on a personal level of living our life. So if we don't do this, we have to understand that every single day, all of those decisions that we wanted to make but didn't, wanted to go ask out that girl or that guy but we didn't, wanted to ask to go jump in the basketball game or soccer game, wanted to go to the gym but didn't, wanted to wake up early but didn't, wanted to go to sleep earlier but didn't. You know, there's so many different ways that we can be that we can be frustrated with ourselves. And when we don't make that decision, I think that we think it's so safe, and in that safe zone, everything is okay, right? But I think what's really happening is we have to face the fact that we are living in fear. We are living kind of as a coward. We're living knowing that we should be doing something else, but we're not because we're scared. And many, many times throughout the day, we have to look ourselves in the mirror and say, I'm not the person that I really want to be. And that's painful. It carries around with it kind of a discomfort and a heaviness and a pain and a burden and a disappointment and almost a little bit of a depression with it. And it's almost like looking through like a tainted window or a dirty window or glass where you can kind of see out into the world and other people are going for it and they're going for it, and sometimes they're failing and sometimes they're getting it, and you just don't know why you're not going for it. But it's like you're looking at the world through this like dirty window or this shaded window. And it's just like we're getting a glimpse of what's over there, but we don't have it and we don't know why. And I think that can really be a heavy, heavy, difficult burden to bear. And I think that some of us are assuming that, maybe 30, 40 years down the line, we'll just be that type of person that does those type of things and live more fully. But I would really encourage us to think about, well, what if it's 30 or 40 more days instead of 30 or 40 more years? If you knew in 30 or 40 more days that was going to be it, would you still want to live there? And for how much longer would you live there before you jumped? And who here has ever made a jump, let's say asked out that girl or that guy, it's such an easy example we can all relate to, and you go for it and you get maybe a little bit brushed aside, but you walk away and you kind of feel good in a way because you know that you went for it and you know that you're being your true self and you were in rapport with yourself. You weren't just cowarding and afraid. It feels good. It actually, in my opinion, and maybe yours as well, maybe tell me in the comments, I think it feels better to jump and fall than to stay here and not jump at all. Because when you jump and fall, it hurts a little bit, but at least you went for it. When you stay here, you have to look at yourself knowing that you didn't go for it. And we tend to make decision after decision after decision not going for it. And that's very, very painful for us because we're very out of rapport and it tugs on us. And the further we get, if this is X2 and this is X1, and we have an even bigger gap, guys, this gap is very, very painful. So what am I saying? I'm saying that we have two choices. We can either be our authentic self or not. But what I'm saying is that not being our authentic self has a cost, and the cost is kind of like a quiet agony. That might sound like a little bit of an exaggeration, but I feel that in my own life. When I'm not going for something I'm passionate about, let's say dance. I love to dance, and I'm scared that I'm gonna be made fun of because I'm not as good as I wanna be, so I don't go for it, and then I feel bad that I'm not going for it, and then I had this idea in my head of dancing and being great, and I keep not doing it, and I keep feeling worse, and so now I'm trying to get myself out of that and say, okay, well, I would rather live here, and in my mind, in my ideal mind of who I really am, I love to dance. As a little kid, I was like bouncing up and down, and I've always loved music, and it's something that I've never gotten good at, but I've always really, really wanted to. And I can tell you for 100% fact that dance for me lives right here, but I'm scared and I stay there. So that's an example for me, just to put myself out there. Maybe gives you a little more confidence to put yourself out there too. But I can tell you, I'm starting to dance each day now. I want to get back into classes. I want to put myself out there more because I love it. And staying here and being scared and being frustrated and being disappointed in yourself is a lot worse than the mild discomfort of taking the action to do this jump. And guess what? If you take the action and jump and you fall, you keep jumping and then you make it. Or guess what? Sometimes you just jump and you do make it. You can't believe it. Maybe you asked for the sale for a change and they said yes. It's like, you didn't think that was gonna happen, but it did. You asked the guy or the girl and they said yes. You're like, oh, really? So it's actually not without risk to stay here. So this is what I wanna leave you guys with today, and we're gonna wrap it up. We all have two choices. We know now that X equals X would be completely authentic. We know that we need to figure out X1. Who is it that we would be if we were completely ourselves? We need to figure out X2. Who are we right now? Who are we being right now? We need to look at this difference And then we need to make a choice. Are we going to be authentic or not? And the reason that I explain it in this kind of more mathematical way, this visual way, is I want you to understand what your choice is, and I want you to understand what the pluses and minuses are. Because you may not be going to X1, not because you wouldn't have done it, but because you just might not realize. These are blind spots that we have. You might not realize, I oftentimes don't realize, we all often don't realize certain risks, certain pain that we're not seeing. And this can affect us our entire life. And we can get to the end and say, oh my God, I wasn't authentic. I wasn't really myself. I didn't go for it. Oh my God. And then that's it. So whether we have 30 days or 40 days or 30 years or 40 years, I would encourage all of us to move from here to here the best we can. I can tell you, I said maybe earlier in the video, this is something that I struggle with too. We all do, we're human beings. There's many times a day where I probably don't go for something that I should. But I can tell you that each time I jump, it feels amazing. And each time I don't, I feel devastated, almost embarrassed, or even disgusted with myself. And those might sound like strong words, but I'm really explaining how I feel when I stay here. And maybe those are things you might be able to relate to. So we all have a choice. Are we going to be authentic, or are we going to be inauthentic? I think that you will go for authentic, and that's what I'm going to try to go for too. So I'll see you there. Thank you.